Hey, I'm Stern, and after talking about the art that is repair buses last week, I want to cover the topic of Sunderers at Spawnpoint this week. Probably the biggest impact you can have as a single player is providing a good spawn point for your allies. This can either be an offensive one or a defensive one. Before covering the topic of what exactly makes a good spawn, let's take a brief look at what you want to equip your Sunderer with. Your goal in terms of weaponry is to be able to defend your bus against immediate threats that might try to kill the planetman spawning, or even the Sunderer itself. Your primary concern here should be versatility. With this in mind, you probably want a Fury and a Walker to defend yourself against the threat of air and the occasional vehicle and infantry in close range. Another good and cheap options would be double Basilisks. While not being as good at the individual tasks, they are a better all-round option. The choice between fire suppression and gate shield diffuser, as well as between racer chassis and rival chassis, once again comes down to situation and preference. The final and most important choice is if you want to run with cloak or deployment shield. This requires a bit of thinking ahead usually. If you're going to place a Sunderer that is going to spawn a lot of planetmans and will be very obvious you want the shield. It is really powerful at keeping your vehicle alive against single individuals trying to destroy it. When your Sunderer is going to be in a spot that is easy to get to and very exposed, you want to run cloak. Being unpredictable is a major part of this, and avoiding common spots is advised. A final note regarding stealth buses. Lock your vehicle to not be accessible by other people by pressing page down and selecting locked. The amount of buses I've lost because someone thought it would be a good idea to fire a gun and not only uncloak it but also alert everyone within a mile to its presence is way too high. If thirds are an issue, I would invest into the deployment shield first. It is a very powerful option and a somewhat cheap one as well, starting at 50 thirds and only costing 850 thirds to max out. Weapons have the lowest priority here, since you are not planning on using your vehicle to fight anyway. With this out of the way, let's move up to the offensive spawn points. Being able to place a good spawn is not easy, especially when you are a new player. To be able to provide one, you must understand battle flow and adapt to the current situation. You want to follow these 3 rules of thumb. Have the shortest walking distance to the point possible, be as far away from the spawn room as possible, and have enough cover or cloak to ensure the Sunderer's safety. You're always battling a base's no deploy zone when trying to achieve this. Let's take a look at an example. Looking at the space and the location of the capture point up north here and the spawn room to the left as well as the Sunderer garage to the right, leaves you with the impression that the base designer intended the red area here to be used for combat. Keeping this in mind, a good Sunderer position would be indeed the garage or a position close to it. And voila, you actually see an NC Sunderer, a cloaked one of that, being close to it. Another viable position to deploy a Sunderer would be in the rocks to the north, ever so slightly out of the frame here. When you consider that the NC is attacking from the south though, the garage is indeed the best place to park one. And if you wanted to place a Sunderer up north, it better be a cloak one because you don't want that to be spotted since it's in TR territory. You should have a rough idea where to park an offensive spawn now, and with that out of the way, let's take a look at what a good defensive spawn looks like. Defensive spawn usually has the single goal of totally breaking a base's intended battle flow, and allowing your allies to spawn as close to the point as possible. Because of no deploy zones, this means that the enemy has to run a much greater distance after respawning, and this gives you a huge advantage when defending a base. Since a lot of bases are not intended for vehicle play within them, you have to find ways to get your Sunderer inside, despite the level designer's best effort to make this impossible. In order to deploy one, you need to correctly predict the enemy's movement and act accordingly. Sometimes it is rather obvious. when there is a Zerg going down a lane, or you can just place one as a safety measure on an important base that you expect might be hit soon. No matter how good you are, you will deploy some that never end up being used, but the ones that save a base make it worth it. As you can see in this example, VS has deployed a defensive Sunderer here. It is a pretty good one actually, since it blocks one route of attack directly, while also offering quick access to the point building, which in turn means that attackers from the other side are also going to be stopped rather quickly. To conclude, deploying a good spawn is not witchcraft. All it takes is some thinking and a basic understanding of battle flow and base design, as well as the willingness to sacrifice a minute or two of combat to help your whole faction. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future content, please let me know in the comments as well. Finally, I'd like to thank the people that helped me to make this video, especially Sika, Twiggy, NB and Robertinho.